Hey guys, Gaia back at it again with more Gaia Gear. This time we are going ahead and wrapping up the remainder of the episodes for the Return to Hellas arc, that being episodes 11 and 12. Once again, we're skipping the formalities and diving right back into the story ahead. But first, if you haven't done so, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, just as a friendly way of supporting the channel. This channel aims to help Gaia Gear, as well as more pieces of obscure Gundam media, help gain more notoriety in the wider community. And by doing so and sharing this video, you're doing a great thing to help boost the popularity of this awesome and amazing lost tale in the Gundam mythos, as well as future stories upon which this channel aims to cover. Now that that's over with, let's do a quick recap as to what happened in this arc so far, as to get everyone else up to speed. After going into space for the first time and meeting with the Metatron Space Forces, Afarachi goes with his friends on a mission to Hellas, so that Afarachi can gain a better understanding of the current state of the colonies, the very place the people of Metatron want him to guide them to as his new role as their leader on their quest for colonial independence. There, he and his friends meet some new allies, and Afarachi is caught and captured by the Manhunters. He meets with their leader, Bijan Dargle, and he is given an explanation as to what Dargle aims to achieve with the Earth Sphere, that he wishes for humanity to abandon space, as he believes they're not yet ready for the responsibility of leaving the planet, and by doing so, they could start over. He essentially asks him to join him in his evil plan. Afarachi of course refuses and is thrown into a cell. His friends who manage to escape hatch a rescue plan and attack the Manhunter base with the help of their new allies, and Afarachi is freed by Captain Madra. They escape into the lower levels of the colony, and Afarachi and the others are now going to have to fight their way out of the colony if they're going to want to escape this place. Luckily, they have a new man-machine with them. Or, in reality, they have a mobile suit, the 90-year-old technological heir to the SAZABI, the RX-110. Zorin Soul. Now that that's over with, let's see how our heroes are going to escape this place. Once again, thank you for watching, and enjoy the show. All images and characters are owned by the respective companies and creators. Episode 11 picks up back with Kellen, Joe, Krishna, Messer, and Ray. They've managed to give the Manhunters the slip, and are now using their man-machines to navigate the inner service halls and lower levels of the Hellas colony. The group taking a short break as to give their muscles a stretch, as they've been crammed inside their cockpits for way too long. As the group stretches their legs, Kellen explains the current plan to the others, that they're gonna be going to meet up with Madra at one of the colony's maintenance airlocks. When Krishna asks about Afarachi, they all give a sigh of relief, as Kellen tells them about all the scrambling radio chatter about Afarachi's escape from the base. When Joe wants to know their next move, Kellen says their job now is to get the Gussas outside of the colony, with him telling Krishna to go meet up with the captain and Afarachi at the airlock. When Joe worries about sending Krishna alone, she tells him she'll be fine and that she can do that while the others get the man-machines to the colony's exterior for the time being. Kellen gives her a signal flare for when they get outside the colony, and the group begins to head their separate ways. But before they can, Krishna asks Messer what he and Ray plan on doing. Ray wants to leave, but Messer says he's not done yet. He still wants to give Afarachi that punch to the face he owes him, and that he still has some fight left in him. The two decide to go with Krishna, and as they leave, Kellen asks Messer if he would like to join Metatron. Messer humorously says no, even though he knows he would make a fantastic pilot with the skills he has. The scene ends with them splitting up, with Joe and Kellen taking the man-machines with them and the other three leaving on foot. Later, the three are navigating the corridors of the inner colony. They reach the door to their destination, but the door is locked. Krishna tries inputting a key code with the help of one of her Metatron gadgets, leaving Messer impressed with the device and with Krishna. He never knew she was so well versed at picking locks. As the three walk the dark corridors, Krishna asks him why he won't consider joining them, that even he knows how bad it is right now for the colonists, and even he can't turn a blind eye to something so obvious. Ray tells her not to give him any bright ideas, but Messer says it's fine, and he actually wants to listen to her. Krishna then says that Messer is a pretty strong guy. He has a strong sense of justice, and he's always the kind of guy to pick fights with people who are bigger than him. Messer himself believes there's no point in taking on those weaker than him, that he'd rather challenge himself than just step on someone else who's beneath him. Krishna asks again why he doesn't join, as the Metatron forces already rival that of the Federation forces and the Federation police. so why doesn't he join? Messer himself tells her that there's no point in trying to tempt him, as he's totally fine with sitting around floating inside this colony as he is. Before Krishna can tell him how stupid he sounds right now, the three hear footsteps marching down the halls. The group hides and they see 5 Federation soldiers march by. As Krishna says they should take another detour and then offers to scout it ahead, the 2 others are left alone as she heads around. Down in the corridors, Krishna approaches another locked door. As she opens it, she's soon blinded by a flashlight. She asks who's making that light, and it turns out it's freaking Yurian. Messer calls to her and she tells him to run. Yurian's men then give chase, with Messer being sent reeling from the hall from the approaching gunfire. This leaves Krishna alone with Yurian. He says he's had a feeling she'd be on Hellas, that if Aphrodite was here, then there was no doubt she would show up too, but he never thought it would be here of all places. He says they seem to have quite the special connection for the 2 of them. Ew. When Krishna asks how they found them, Yurian reveals that he and his men have been tracking the doors she's unlocked with her Metatron tools via the colony's computers, tracking the times she used her hacking tool to open them. At first, Yurian thought it was Aphrodite, but it turns out this time it was her this time. When Yurian asks where Aphrodite is, Krishna says no, leaving Yurian to remind her once again that her silent treatment doesn't work on the Manhunters. He then says never mind, as he already knows that someone used the airlock to escape to the outside. Krishna says it's not them, but Yurian tells her she's really bad at lying, as he already knows it's most likely Aphrodite. Now, to take a quick pause for a second, the part back in episode 10 where we last saw Aphrodite and the captain, you'd think that this is where they immediately went out into space, but actually that's not the case. They actually haven't made it out there yet. They have to make it from the tunnels under the Manhunter base and then make their way to the airlocks out by the service hatches by the spaceport. If you're as confused as I was the first time I heard this, thinking, wait, why are they still in the colony? I thought they left. No, that's not what's happened. They didn't leave just yet. The airlock they opened was to get into the service tunnels. It's actually explained that colonies have a very thin atmosphere along the service walls between space and the colony itself. That is the reason why they need the normal suits so early on, by the way. Down in the lower levels of the colony, Aphrodite and Madra are navigating the tunnels. Aphrodite tells Madra that he himself met Bijan Dargal. Madra is shocked and asks what he was like. Aphrodite says that the man does seem to be quite the charming figure. He almost won Aphrodite over with his words, almost to the point that Aphrodite thought Dargal would have probably won his services if he hadn't met Metatron first. Madra says that many of the Manhunters worship Dargal as their leader, and now hearing from Aphrodite, he can understand why. But then, Aphrodite explains Dargal's philosophy to Madra, that his goal is to return humanity from space and back to Earth. Aphrodite himself doubts himself as he himself doesn't have such a philosophy to guide his own actions as Metatron's new leader. Madra calls bullshit, and that's just the kind of thing that the leader of the Manhunters would do to Char's successor, make him feel inferior. Aphrodite feels that Madra is teasing him, and the captain apologizes for any jokes. Aphrodite then asks Madra about something he said a long ways back in the second episode, that Madra told him that somehow the part of Aphrodite that contained the fragments of Char would reawaken once he went to space, that even though he's here now, he doesn't exactly feel like anything has changed for him. He hasn't even heard much of Char's voice since he left. The captain then points out that he's become even more worried because of this, and Aphrodite says that the Metatron forces have treated him so well since he arrived, but that it's only because they know he contains the memories of Char, and if those memory flashes have stopped, what use is he? The captain then points out that yes, the Admiral and the others are depending on him to be the successor to Char Aznable, but that he, Krishna, and his crew aren't like that they just like him as he is. Aphrodite asks if the fact he's a new type or not even matters to them, but the captain says yes, they just want to follow him because he's a good person and a good leader. Aphrodite says thank you, and the captain states that whatever happened with Dargal wasn't a coincidence. Something is guiding him towards this path. That this was a destined encounter with his true enemy. That this quote-unquote coincidence must actually be Char Aznable guiding him forward. This reminds Aphrodite of his recent meeting with the fortune teller Ento, that she said there was a light guiding him forward. Maybe she's right, that light is Char. Suddenly, something happens. Something to Afarachi. It's not like the same ringing he's experienced before with his memory flashes. It's a buzzing, a low, vibrating noise from his mind. He can sense it. It emanates with hatred. Hatred towards him. But another voice is telling him to leave. That something is coming for him. The two of them soon take cover, and they're surprised to see that it's just Messer and Ray. The two reunite with Afarachi, and he asks what happened to them. Messer had been shot, but luckily they managed to put on normal suits when they entered the tunnels, so Messer himself is mostly fine. They apologize that Krishna was taken, that the manhunters ambushed them, and that Krishna was captured. Afarachi then realizes that the presence he felt must have been her crying out to him, and that the hatred he felt resonating in his mind was that of Yurian's. Back down in the other tunnels, Yurian interrogates Krishna again. He asks her how many of her allies are here on Hellas, and Krishna asks why on earth she would tell him that. Yurian himself knows that Madra is most likely here, and Krishna once again says no. Now, this is where Yurian once again gets all creepy. Yurian says that she should just say it, since it'll all just work out for everyone in the end. That Krishna to Yurian is his lady luck, and she seems to always be granting him good fortune whenever she appears. When Krishna calls him a creep, yes, he absolutely is one, the man says that there must be some greater reason as to why the two of them have been meeting each other so often. Krishna says no, that what he's saying is the worst pickup line ever. I agree, the guy is an asshole, but Yurian says that he actually doesn't intend on seducing her in any way, but in reality, he just wants to make her his. Man, Yurian, you're the worst. Seriously, dude, you belong in a dark pit with Yazan Gable. Stay away from her, and I mean that literally. After this, he tries touching her. Back off, dude, you're disgusting. Luckily, Krishna knocks his hand away and the man backs off. But Jesus, I freaking hate this guy. He makes me want to puke. He quotes her own words at the end of the scene, stating that Krishna seems to be right about him, that he somehow both comes off as both angel and devil. Something I'm going to bring up at the end of this episode in my little rant about him, because I have a lot to say about this guy, especially in the first half of this story. I hate this dude. Now, back with Afarachi and the others, Madra returns from scouting the halls and says that the manhunters are on their way and they need to hurry. When Afarachi asks if they're going to go rescue Krishna, the captain says no, that they're already in enough danger sitting around in the airlock area, that they need to get outside of the colony before it's too late. As they plan to launch the signal flare for the rescue party, Messer gets into a new normal suit that the captain managed to grab for him, since the one he's wearing is filled with bullet holes. Afarachi once again says that he can't leave her, but the captain knows it's wrong, but that they can't put everyone else at risk because of her. This leaves Ray to say that Metatron seems pretty cold-hearted to follow the lives of the many come before the lives of the few mentality. She then asks what Afarachi thinks, and the young man says that he can't abandon her. She's his friend and is highly invaluable to him. They all agree to rescue Krishna, but the captain says that they need to escape before they can. As they all plan to head out of the colony, Afarachi can sense that pressure he felt before, that sense that Yurian is nearby. Back with Yurian, he's still wondering why Krishna came to Hellas. When Krishna reveals that the reasons were to teach Afarachi about the struggles of the colonies, the ensign says that it was a really bad idea to come to Hellas of all places if they wanted to teach Afarachi about that. Krishna says that this would be the best way to make Afarachi understand, and asks Yurian if he himself can understand this, since he himself grew up in the colonies, that he grew up in a place worse than Hellas. It is here that we learn a little bit more about Yurian as a person. He reveals that yes, he grew up in the colonies, but that his own personal life was far worse than the colony itself. That when he was young, his family was destitute, that his father drank, his mother was abusive, and he himself had to be the one to look after all of his siblings. If he hadn't have stopped himself from stealing, he might have gone to jail for murder, and that one day, he managed to escape it all thanks to an incident he had on a rainy day. He was walking home, and a rich woman splashed him with her car. When he got soaked, the woman came out and threw a bunch of money at him. From the look she gave him, she looked as though she was looking down at him, like some kind of rat being shoved away with a piece of paper. Then it hit him that one day he'll rise up beyond her to achieve a status where he can finally look down on someone like her. Krishna tells him that that's a terrible way of living, and Yurian laments that yes it is, but that everything finally changed when he met Bijan Dargal. When Krishna asks why he would side with the Manhunters, Yurian says that the rumors are true, and the captain is cruel, but that he's mostly just cruel to himself. The man always discards his own emotions for the sake of his goals, that to Yurian, he himself has misplaced ambitions in many ways like he does, and that by meeting him, he too would have a chance at changing himself for the better. It is here that Yurian reveals his own personal dream, one that would make Reinhardt from Legend of the Galactic Heroes very proud. He wants to seize the world for himself and become the true ruler of the Earth sphere. Krishna says that she actually fears for him, that countless people have come throughout history to have had that same desire, this goal always consuming people like Yurian because of it. She wonders that if Yurian ends up achieving this goal, what will he even have left of himself in the end? Yurian says that it's not what's left behind that matters, and that it's always best to live your life in pursuit for the top. Krishna says it's impossible, but Yurian says that he needs to do this, that he needs to become the strongest so that he can never feel inferior again, that once that happens, even Dargal won't even be able to stop him. Krishna then says that she hates men like Yurian, men who believe in solely strength, and leaves Yurian to ask, what does Afaranchi's kindness earn her? Krishna says that true strength is granted by those who embrace kindness, but Yurian says that that kind of strength is just another word for weakness. That because of Afaranchi's weakness, it was what led to Yurian meeting Krishna now. When Krishna says that he's wrong for thinking that, Yurian cuts her off as it seems Yurian's men have surrounded the entrance to the airlock area. Yurian then asks if, after all this time, he wonders if Afaranchi will finally come to him. He takes Krishna with him as he intends to use her as a hostage, that Afaranchi won't leave without coming to save her. This leaves Krishna telling him once again that he's wrong, that Afaranchi is Metatron's leader, and he'll escape Yurian. And with that sentiment, the episode comes to an end. Okay, episode 11. We're very close to finishing this arc. We've just got one left to go. Finally, I just want to mention that I didn't have the best time recording the audio for this episode. This episode is definitely where the arc loses a lot of its momentum, and I feel like this is the part in the story where a lot of people might find that they lose interest in Gaia Gear as a whole. This arc had a lot of talking, and this arc can really drag on at times, and I can totally understand why. This episode was definitely one of those. But thankfully, we're past it, and we can get moving on to the next episode. But before we do that, now that this one is done, let's address the elephant in the room and talk about... Let's talk about Yurian. These scenes with him and Krishna, Jesus Christ, I hate this guy. But when you hear his motives behind the way he acts, you can sort of understand where he's coming from. Now, bringing up what I said about the angel and the devil thing, I think from that line of dialogue, we as the audience can figure out something about Yurian that the story doesn't directly address. Now, I'm not in any way qualified in matters involving mental illness, but I think from that conversation that this guy is actually supposed to come off as somewhat being bipolar, where he goes from being this nice, charismatic guy, and then when his obvious inferiority complex is brought up, he switches over into full-on creep mode. Now, just a heads up, there are a couple more moments in Gaia Gear where he pulls stuff on Krishna like what he just did. Their relationship actually becomes very manipulative and straight up abusive towards the end. Because when you listen to this guy, he's very much manipulating Krishna's emotions and the fact that she is so naive. That one scene being one of those things I've mentioned before as to why Krishna doesn't have the best time in Gaia Gear. She's naive, but almost too naive, to the point where she starts to fall for this absolute asshole. Also, I can't state this enough, Yurian sucks, he's a terrible person, and I can't wait to see him burn. And guess what? He's gonna burn very soon. I'm not gonna be saying much more on him. Yes, he did just commit a horrible crime, But since there's a moment later in the story where his behavior gets even worse, I'll be saving my biggest rant for when that happens. Yeah, and I'm telling you this now, he gets even worse than what he just did. Ugh. As for the rest of this episode, this is definitely once again where this story loses a lot of its momentum. We've had 5 episodes now of us heading to Hellas, Avarachi getting captured, and then rescued, only for Krishna to get captured. And I find this part is, once again, a place where a lot of people might find they lose interest in the story. But for us, if you're still watching the series, thank you for sticking around this long. We've actually reached the halfway point of the story. We've actually made it a whole 12 episodes into the radio drama. And I hope that this series has been entertaining for you, as it has been for me to re-experience. Now, let's finally bring an end to the Hellas arc, with episode 12, Awakening. The team readies at the final airlock. Messer and Ray agree that they're coming with Madra and Avarachi, that they can't stay behind, as that's just begging for them to get caught. The captain asks if it's okay for them to leave Hellas, and the two are fine with it. Madra tells Avarachi to close his helmet seals, and the group opens the final airlock doors. Avarachi is freaked out as the stars move around him at his feet, the feeling of the colony rotating almost making him dizzy with his first step. The group tells him to keep his eyes on the colony and to not look out into space, and that the moment they set foot off the colony, there won't be any gravity to hold them down. The group then moves out and uses their maneuver packs to navigate the colony's outer walls. As they move closer to their rendezvous point, the group sees a flash of light erupt from the darkness, followed by a trail of light. A man-machine battle has begun. The group all wonders what to do, as they still need to use the flare. Luckily, Krishna gave it to Messer before she got captured, but as soon as they try to come up with a way to get their friend's attention, Avarachi can feel Yurian's presence again. Without hesitation, Avarachi asks the captain to radio Joe and Kellen that whatever is coming for him, Avarachi needs to be in a man-machine himself, that Yurian is on his way, and that he has to face him when he arrives. The captain then asks if this sense is one of the powers that a new type has. Avarachi says he's not quite sure, but that right now he can feel the presence of Yurian and Krishna coming towards them, Yurian's hatred emanating like a grinding noise in his mind. Avarachi orders him to shoot the flare, and the captain obeys. As they wait for the response, they see a trail of light shine out towards them. It's Kellen. The Zorin soul managed to notice their flare and has come to get them. When the Zorin soul arrives, Kellen relays to them that their machines were ambushed while they were waiting for the signal flare. The captain asks if Joe is okay, and the young man says that he's fine, but he's currently the one who's having to deal with the other machines at the moment. Avarachi then asks to use the Zorin soul. Kellen asks why, and the captain tells him that Avarachi is going to use it to go rescue Krishna, and that he's ordering him to switch places with him. Kellen complies, and Avarachi trades spots with him as he begins to man the old mobile suit. Avarachi thanks the captain, and Kellen gives a brief rundown of the mobile suit and its controls, saying that it's much older than what he's used to with the Gaia Gear, and that he won't get as much power out of it as to what he's familiar with. Avarachi thanks him for the help, and the unit blasts off into the void. As Avarachi flies through the darkness, he can't help but be amazed by what he's doing. He's flying through space. He never thought he'd be here, but as he flies through that darkness, he begins to hear the sound of Char's voice in his head as he flies. What Char says is one of the speeches we've heard him reiterate a few times throughout the original Gundam story, one that helps Avarachi understand what it is he's sensing right now, that when humans leave Earth behind, hidden powers within them begin to manifest within their bodies. The departure from Earth and release from its gravity leads to this change in human perception and cosmic awareness. That what Avarachi is experiencing, both with the memories he unlocks and the senses he is now gaining of others' consciousnesses, is what is propelling him forward as a new type. That humanity must work towards this state of mind so that they can finally achieve true peace and happiness for all. With that sentiment, Avarachi finally gets it. He now understands what a new type is, what he is. With this realization, he finally can fully sense the pure hatred of Yurian's soul as it screeches out into the void towards him. But as that anger becomes clearer to him, he realizes that it's not just Yurian, it's all of them. Every pilot of the man-machines out flying through the darkness all out there is all filled with hatred towards a single opponent. Avarachi spots Joe in the Gussa and tells him to back off. Joe complies, and the Zorin soul begins to engage the other man-machines, 1v7. The opening salvo is intense. Beam shots, missiles, and beam sabers fly in every possible direction towards Afaranchi. However, throughout all this chaos, Afaranchi is completely unfazed. As they all close in towards him, the Zorin soul does something unexpected, something that even Kellen couldn't do with his knowledge of the machine. With Afaranchi's new type powers resonating at this newfound level, the Zorin soul's true power activates, a power that has remained dormant for all these years. With it, the ancient mobile suit of 90 years old releases 4 miniature fin funnels from its skirt armor. These fin funnels are much like ones we've seen before, although ones we've never seen in a trifold configuration. They zip around the formation of Gussas and decimate the units with concussive snaps of bolting energy, the 4 funnels dashing and blasting the Gussas one by one as they're cut to pieces by the energy attacks. With all but 1 Gussa left, Afaranchi draws the Zorin Soul's beam rifle, charging it and releasing a burst of beam repeater fire that punches through the last machine with a hailstorm of plasma. The Gussa explodes and Afaranchi is left victorious, the Zorin Soul's funnels locking back onto its body with a uniform clasp. The crew is astonished. Afaranchi has done it. He took down 7 man-machines on his own. It's true. It's happened. The Red Comet has finally awakened. Back at the spaceport, Yurian shoves Krishna into the hangar, but as the man holds her at gunpoint at the lift, Yurian learns from one of his men that the entire Gussa squadron sent to eliminate the 2 Metatron man-machines has been completely decimated. Yurian is frozen. He knows that Afaranchi would be the only one who could do that. As Afaranchi tries to use his senses to locate Yurian and Krishna, he manages to follow their presence to a sealed hangar door. He raises the beam rifle towards it and lowers the output. Yurian tries to force Krishna inside of his Bromtexter, asking the soldier over the comms to get Lila and the rest of their squadron ready for combat. But before their lift can reach the top, Krishna shoves him and leaps away from the man-machine in the decreased gravity. As she floats away, Afaranchi finds his chance and blows a hole through the hangar doors, instantly vaporizing the Bromtexter as the beam melts a hole in the hangar wall beside them. As Afaranchi feels the presence of Yurian vanish, he opens the cockpit and uses his maneuvering pack to enter the hangar. Once inside, he's soon reunited with Krishna, who's happy that he came all this way to save her. The two enter the Zorin Soul and the machine blasts off. As the two fly away, Krishna asks if Afaranchi managed to kill Yurian. He says he's not sure and that he can't sense him anymore, leaving Krishna to lament for him. Afaranchi asks why she feels bad for him, but comes to a realization himself as to why she feels that way. He didn't really deserve to get melted. As the two fly off into space, the two look out into the void and see the Spacius. The crew of the ship welcome them with open arms and the Zorin Soul docks, the ship and the entire team escaping Hellas and returning to Metatron, all safe and sound. And holy shit, it took 3 videos, but finally, we've left Hellas behind. This entire arc gets us to the halfway point. We're finally here, guys. Episode 12 marks the halfway point for the whole story of Gaia Gear. Yes, there are 26 episodes, but after this episode, we finally exit the story's full first half. And oh my god, let's start talking about some stuff. Now, I really love that episode 12 is nice and short, because I definitely started to feel like things dragged on a little too much inside the colony in episode 11. Most of this entire arc is nothing but standing around and walking and talking, which really can get annoying when you're just trying to listen to the story to completion. But luckily, the entire 12th episode makes up for this with nothing but action. Now, I was going to make this a shorter dissection towards the end of this video, but I've decided not to do that, as there is a topic I want to discuss, but I didn't feel like it deserved its own video, mainly because it's rather disconnected from Gaia Gear and devolves into some larger info that exists amongst the Gundam community. Now, because of how disconnected this next tangent would be, I've decided to go with the idea of adding it to this episode, since this episode is rather shorter than the others. For now, we're going to go ahead and leave this part as it is. In the next major episode, I will be discussing this theory. I have a lot to say about it, but I'm gonna be skipping over it to talk about this next issue I have, as this tangent actually involves two different things, but I've decided to split them apart. Now, finally, I would like to address this, and it's something big, something that I came to realize after experiencing Gaia Gear for the second time, and it's something that might lead to some heavy debate and argument between many of the fans from all corners of the internet, it seems. Now, for a little bit of context as to what this is about, let's dial the clock back to the old days to 1993, back to when Victory Gundam had its initial release. This year also in fact marks the year that the Gaia Gear radio drama was first released. At the time, there was this little theory that was being tossed around about Uso Yuen, the protagonist of Victory Gundam, that Uso Yuen is secretly a grandson or great-grandson to Char Aznable. Many fans to this day still kind of believe this, but today I'm actually going to be putting that theory to the test. Now, for those of you who didn't know this theory even existed, good on you, but I'm going to have to dive into it. Now, Uso Yuen's mother has the surname of Miguel, that being a similar last name to that of Nanai Miguel, Char's lover in Char's counterattack. These two characters have the same last name, but they are spelt differently. Now, it's been debated if this was done intentionally, but in recent years, Tomino has stated that Uso and Char bear no biological relation to one another, with many Gundam fans questioning why this was done to begin with. But in all reality, I believe this was a theory that just snuck its way out of the production team's early notes that never was intended to make it into the show later on. Now, we don't know who spread this theory, but once the community caught wind of this, they began asking Tomino if it was true. But Tomino himself has stated that this theory isn't true, and to back it, it never gets any footing with Victory Gundam, as the connection is never brought up by anyone throughout this whole story. This left Gundam fans with the question, why isn't Uso related? And why wasn't he a descendant of Char to begin with? It would have done a good job to connect the two series. Now, one of the possible reasons I've come to realize is that one of the reasons behind this change is no doubt probably because of Gaia Gear. Not entirely, but definitely one of the small reasons. And that this change might have been a precautionary action taken by Tomino to protect the sanctity and integrity of his Gaia Gear novels within the framework of the original Gundam story and its importance to the canon. Now, it's not the reason, but it's probably one of them. Now, why would this be done, you ask? Well, because if Uso Yuen were revealed to be a descendant of Char, his sheer existence would completely invalidate Afuranchi's role as the true successor to Char Aznable's legacy. And from a character standpoint, Tomino would be right. Uso really isn't worthy of being a descendant or heir to Char with the way that he is. Uso appears in one series that's entirely disconnected from the main narrative, being a conflict fought between the Earth's civilian-led resistance, the Ligue Militaire, and the Zeon copycat nation of the Zanskar Empire. Now you might say, but Gaia Gear is more obscure than Victory. It's more disconnected than Victory. And to that I say, hell no. It's never properly addressed in the story. This change was done by someone to shoehorn a link between the two characters. Uso's personality is nothing like his supposed forebearer. He treats war like a game, and it's never mentioned that he's somehow related to Char, and the fact that some people try to justify his absurd actions by calling him a descendant of Char doesn't do anything to reinforce the claim that he's worthy of such a mantle, which definitely he is not. With this logic, Afuranchi is without a doubt the actual closest thing that Char Aznable will ever have to a true son and heir. And for those who say, oh, but Nanai is revealed to be pregnant in Beltorchica's children, and to that I say, and when was the last time we saw Nanai? And I mean in all versions of CCA? She just lost Char to the Axis drop. She hadn't learned anything from her experiences with him, at least anything positive. I doubt she would run away and wallow in misery after his death. The woman is a spiteful person, and her surviving CCA no doubt lends credence to another theory that she stayed with Zeon and helped create Full Frontal, as she was the director of the Neo-Zeon New Type Labs. Now, a character like Nanai would no doubt despise Full Frontal, being a Frankenstein-like copy of her lover, but nonetheless would still pursue the path of bringing Char back to life, something I could see her actually doing. And from a story perspective, there's no real link from this to this. The pieces don't really fit together. And if you ask me about the unborn child that Nanai has in those books, the Beltorchika's Children books, there's actually a conversation in a recent Moon Gundam chapter that lends credence to the idea that Nanai might actually lose that baby she would carry, something I believe is the end result for her, and no doubt a reason she would become obsessed with bringing Char back. Now, this isn't all bad, as one of the things I do believe is a positive for Nanai is that I actually believe she is probably, in all likelihood, the one responsible for initiating the Char continuation project originally. If she was helping Neo-Zeon create Full Frontal from Char's psychoframe, which she absolutely would, I mean, she was the director of the New Type Labs, I doubt she'd be able to run away, and also, Neo-Zeon probably wouldn't let her go. Because of that, it would make sense that she'd also be the one to cultivate his DNA and memories, with her knowledge passing on throughout the decades and it later resulting in Miranda, her being the latest disciple of Nanai's teachings, resulting in her creating a clone that was made to reverse and correct the errors in the original individual that Nanai had as a lover. So, if you're one of those people who still thinks Uso Yuan is the heir to Char Aznavour, go listen to Gaia Gear and try to prove me wrong. And now I sit back and wait for the death threats. Oh yeah, can't wait to get those from the Victory fans. It's gonna be a good time. Anyways, that's it for this episode of Gaia Gear. Tune in next time where I go into the next arc of the story, episodes 13 and 14. The big turning point for the entire conflict is about to begin, and it's going to be quite the epic journey going forward. See you next time. This is Gaia Gaius, signing off. Later.